Welcome to episode 234 of Empty the Bench of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. He's Tom Albano. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. If you want to go listen on all our audio platforms as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Odyssey. We're on all the platforms. You can find us in audio as we continue to grow that platform with all our other audio endeavors and stuff across the network as well. ETBpodcast.com, where we have a growing blogging platform now as well, with all sports being covered. We're covering the NBA playoffs. We are getting back to the WNBA with Caitlin Clark. We're starting to head back towards the NFL. So make sure you go check out our website, etbpodcast.com. And if you look for /blog, that's where you can find the blog section. And, excuse me, the Empty the Bench Podcast Network is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with commentators or communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule, including when this show is done, a few hours from now. You can go check out Game 2 of Celtics Pacers. And by the way, Game 1, incredible. By the way, you're muted, Tom. But
wild. I said wild, just wild.
That game was incredible. We overtime in Game 1. I mean, that's all I have to say about that. And Jaylen Brown is a beast, as we've learned. Incredible game. Jason Tatum, incredible game. We'll get to the NBA playoffs in a little bit. But make sure you go check out our Playback streams. We're doing a ton all the way through to the NBA finals. So we're going to be on either every day or every other day through the next 2 to 3 weeks, at least.
It's going to be insane. We will talk about the NBA playoffs. We will talk more about this NBA stuff with NBC, which is likely more than not going to be finalized after this week, and what the future holds at TNT. We'll talk a little baseball. It's actually a little bit of a local day for baseball, or I should say a local week, because we have a Mets story and a Yankee story involving two of the sport's biggest names. We will talk about Bronny, because of course we will. And we have a couple of NFL stories, one involving a rookie, one involving, it's a little bit of a breaking kind of news story in the last 24 to 30 hours. That's the last story of here. But first things first, we do have to talk about the big story that's taken over the headlines. Actually, it's actually kind of quieted down over the last couple of days, but for most of this past week, it's been all about the PGA Championship. Yes, we're actually talking golf here on ETB Sport. But
we're talking about the
off the green.
The outer dwellings of the PGA world. And this story is bizarre. We have to go back to a little bit of the beginning to kind of interpret, so I can explain. I happened to be at work at 6:30 a.m. Eastern. Yes, I work as early as Tom does. We both are early risers. We work in school districts. So I get to work. I'm doing all my setup. I'm on my phone scrolling on Twitter because everyone does that at work. And all of a sudden I see a long tweet, not like your typical like breaking news, whatever. So Jeff Darlington, who is probably one of the better NFL reporters for ESPN, now does PGA or golf coverage for ESPN, I guess, in the off season. So he puts out a large tweet. I don't have it in front of me, but all I remember is that Scottie Scheffler gets arrested. He's the number one golfer in the world. By the way, I have to preface that because that's important here. He got arrested for going through a traffic checkpoint. And what's even more bizarre about this whole thing, How do you not recognize the number one golfer in the world?
So supposedly that is what had gone on, because now we should give the circumstances for what had happened, because it is actually kind of tragic. Apparently there was a bus that drove into a vehicle which killed an elderly gentleman, if I'm not
It was a shuttle
mistaken.
bus. The guy, I think, was walking,
Or
and it was
walking.
a pedestrian hit by a shuttle bus. It was actually a shuttle bus. I think it's one of those rotating, like around the grounds, I think is what I read. And what's even makes this even more bizarro, he was a volunteer for the event.
For the event, which is even sadder. Um, so they ended up having this took place right outside the entrance, if I'm not mistaken. So
In one
basically
of
what
the
they had to do,
checkpoints. Yeah.
so they had to basically close it off, and there were all these new security measures that basically had to be put in order for, because the golfers had to golf. They didn't move the PGA Championship time. I mean, let me correct that. They did, but it was because of fog. So they moved that up to about 10 a.m. Eastern. Uh, so all the golfers are being let in, and for some reason, the police outside of the PGA Championship did not recognize Scottie Scheffler. Now, if Nick or I or anybody who's not a big follower of golf, I actually should correct myself. I mean, Nick sometimes.
I like to
Me,
play golf more than watch it,
right?
but
Me, not so much. Say more than me. So I probably wouldn't be able to pick Scottie Scheffler out of a crowd.
let
But
me be clear too. I wouldn't recognize him either. And I know
I
a
guess
lot of
my point is that the police are there, who are hired for the PGA Championship.
the actual event itself.
They should be able to recognize, have an understanding of who is who and all the different credentials. But for whatever reason, they wanted to stop Scottie Scheffler, and this is where things get confusing,
Murky.
because Scottie Scheffler claims there was a miscommunication and he did not follow some direction because he didn't understand what was happening. And then you hear the police side of things, which is where basically he, to use the words of SpongeBob, floored it and
Yeah,
ended up
quite
taking an
literally.
officer with him.
Well, okay. So there's some clarification in that. So apparently he did that. You're right about the first part. He gets stopped at the checkpoint, and then from what they're saying, he basically said screw it and hit the gas pedal, and the cop jumped on top of the car. And that's one of the charges where there's something not right there. So he jumps on the car, but that gets added to the charges that he assaulted an officer, or there's a lot of confusion there.
Mm-hmm. And what's not helping things is that there is body cam footage of the arrest, but there's no body cam footage of
From
the
the
event.
officer itself.
Yeah, from the event in question. So it's unclear right now. It's unclear if this officer just was not assigned a body cam or did not need a body
No,
cam
he
for this.
said I didn't turn it on. Those were
Okay,
some of the words
when
he
you
used.
told me this story, a couple of days ago, you said it was unclear what had happened.
No, so they said that the body cam was non-existent. That's kind of the term they used, but then it came out that supposedly he never turned it on.
And
Which
that's
that's a
going
problem.
to be a problem.
Because when they go to say, well, hello, where's the evidence of whatever you did? And they're gonna be like, well, I don't have it. Like, the case could get thrown out just on that standard alone.
It could. It honestly could.
I mean, I'm looking at the charges. I understand some of them. Some of them I don't. So let's quickly go through these. So he's facing 4 charges. With the most, now he got charged with a felony, by the way, for one of them, which that's a serious thing. So he got charged with felony second degree assault on a police officer after he allegedly tried to go around an officer directing traffic at the scene of a fatal crash outside the Valhalla Golf Club. So
Which is
again,
bad itself.
that's bad, But again, we don't have all the details. Someone is saying one thing, and both sides are saying different things.
So either the truth is somewhere within the middle, or somebody's being complete BS.
Yeah. It says police are planning on holding a press conference the day that we're doing this to discuss the case. And CNN reported officials will release a new video from the arrest that was shot from a traffic pole camera. So, because I forgot, most traffic poles now have cameras wherever you go. So I'm sure they could get that footage. It says, however, it's unclear if it will show the beginning of the alleged incident between Scheffler and Detective Brian Gillies, who was the one who got hurt and ended up in the hospital.
All right, so basically, we'll talk about the press conference potentially next week, because obviously we're recording this before the press conference.
Right, and it says the alleged. So here's some of the timeline. The alleged events leading to the arrest started around 6 a.m. Scheffler was making his way to the course. He was going for early tee practice.
Yeah.
Like before, which a lot of golfers do, or any athlete does. They go early, they put their work in and whatever. And now he's claiming this was a, quote, big misunderstanding. This whole thing, Scheffler is saying.
I mean, no, I know. I'm saying, well, I mean, big misunderstanding. I think that's kind of an understatement.
That's the understatement of the century, to be quite honest. Let's see. Jefferson County Attorney Mike O'Connell objected to the continuance of the case because it got delayed. It was supposed to be June 3rd. They basically threw it out to a later date. I don't know how late they threw it out till, but I really don't know what to expect. It says police are also looking into whether Gillies followed protocol during the incident.
Yeah, so there's a lot that we got to figure out. And unfortunately, as of the time we're recording this, we don't have answers.
We don't have answers. My gut is telling me that this is going to get thrown out just because he's the number one golfer in the world. I don't like that things are treated that way, but that's just what I think is going to happen. And the PGA Tour is going to vouch in every way, shape, or form.
And again, it doesn't help that there's no body cam footage.
I mean, that's probably the dumbest mistake I've ever heard in my life. You're stopping someone who, big name in professional sports, and you're not taking the footage knowing that your name is going to be all over the media and the news saying for the guy, you pulled over Scottie Scheffler for doing all this stuff. And by the way, you and I talked about this right after it happened. If it wasn't for Bob Wischusen being like a few minutes late, because for whatever reason, Darlington would not have seen it because he was part of the team that was there covering the event for ESPN, even though I think the whole tournament was on ESPN.
And it's kind of wild. And it's kind of wild that all these circumstances between this and the fog delaying everything to 10 o'clock, Scottie Scheffler actually managed to make tee time and ended up having the best performance of that day.
I think he shot a 66, if I'm not mistaken. I think, and
60 something, 66.
It was a record. It was a record round, at least from what I remember them saying. If it wasn't for the fog delay, though, he would have missed tee time for sure. Yeah. So a lot of things had to go the right. And I guarantee you, the PGA Tour was saying, "Thank God for the fog! Thank God for the fog!" I guarantee you, because golf is very particular. In that way, their ratings are from their players.
Right. Well, I was going to ask, if Scheffler missed opening tee time, would he have to have forfeited the whole tournament? Or just that day?
That's a good question. I don't know the whole answer, but I don't know. It all depends on what their rules are with criminal mischief, or if they just, first of all, they would have played favorites again because he's the number one golfer in the world. He probably would have slid by in some way, shape, or form, but I don't know what the exact rule is. I mean, if it was a baseball player, an NBA player, they just get suspended and they miss games. I mean, this is not the same thing. Golf's an individual sport, so we'll have to look into that, especially when we hear more info on this. But I think there's wrongs on both sides of this. One, Scottie Scheffler thinks he's hell above high water for everybody. Part of it, because one, he drove past a checkpoint without stopping. And number two, the cop. Now, how many times have we heard this issue in the past where cops don't follow protocol? And
Yeah.
again, let me preface this very carefully. I'm not even talking about politics. I'm not saying it for that reason. I'm just saying, how many times in general have we seen cops not follow protocol, and then it leads to a whole controversy in that regard?
And in this case, it's not even just dealing with a civilian; it's dealing with somebody of quite celebrity status.
Correct. And my gut, and we'll end on this point, is that I think the case is going to get thrown out. I just don't see it. Could he get a slap on the wrist and a huge fine? That's probably as far as it'll go. I've never really heard of fines in golf like that.
Well, you never really hear of stories like this in golf. This is the first time I can think of a major golf controversy involving
Tiger.
I was going to say involving a golfer. So I'm not talking about the PGA LIV stuff. I'm talking about involving a golfer, Tiger. Yeah.
And the weird part is they say Scottie Scheffler is like a bad boy of golf. And I was like, and so I went and I had to go look this up. And like, he's done some things in the past, not like this, but
yeah.
The last.
Well, no, well, you know what? Now he really has that status.
He does. I mean, first of all, Tiger will take the cake for all the stuff that he did off the golf course, cheating on his wife, doing all that.
Well, I was going to say him driving into the tree and all the women falling out of it.
Well, that was bad. Absolutely. I mean, what was he, high or on drugs when he crashed a car too, reportedly? And like, there's some golfers that can't control themselves. Let's just put it that way. But
it's like golf. I didn't know you could be this edgy.
Yeah, but here's how I'll leave. The status I'll leave on this story is unfinished. That's where I'm going to leave it because we don't have all the answers. But
I mean, like you said, press conference happened today, but we're recording this the Wednesday night, so we don't know anything.
When we find out more, we will tell you.
I was going to say, which means stay tuned for next week for us to continue to talk about this. And you know what else?
What?
If we're going to embrace bad boyness in golf, stay tuned for the XGA, brought to you by Vince McMahon.
Oh, Jesus. Oy, oy, oy. By the way, I have to laugh about one thing, because our show always gets extended because all the stories break. We've had some bad luck the past couple of weeks where the stories are breaking the day after our show airs. This broke the day after our show aired. So, hey, at least we don't have to scramble like we had the last couple months.
Well,
but,
it's time for your favorite topic. Let's talk about the NBA and let's talk about the playoffs. So we've got our Final Four. The conference finals now officially underway. We've got on the Eastern end, we've got Boston, and unfortunately, we have Indiana. And on the west side, we have Minnesota and we have Dallas. Yes, Minnesota and Dallas upset Oklahoma City and Denver.
You know what, though?
Heard that right.
Yeah, but you know what? That series is fascinating in a different regard. I'll start with that one because I'm way more attached to the Celtics basis, so I'll come back to that. But what was the stat I saw? Oh, the number one defense versus the highest scoring point per game league in Luka. So just think about that. That's an incredible stat in itself. So I want to see how the Timberwolves defense handles Luka and even Kyrie. You know what? And this is going to sound insane coming out of my mouth, but Kyrie's had a good playoffs. Like, he's had a really good playoffs.
Wait a minute. Sound the alarms. Nick Morgasen is actually saying good things about Kyrie.
But here's the weird thing. It's not on the scoring front, per se. Like, he's leading, I can't believe I'm saying this, leading a team to victories. And really, the guy who's really been awesome for Dallas is PJ Washington. This guy is averaging like 23, 24, 25 points a game. This guy deserves the attention because he's just not getting it. Like, Kyrie and Luka are obviously going to get the attention. They're the two big guys on the roster. But go back to the Miami days and look at the role players. Ray Allen was probably the biggest role player. First of all, hit the biggest three in Miami history, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And the role guys are sometimes more important than the big two or three themselves. So when I look at this and I say, all right, I actually think this is a much closer series than people are giving the illusion of. And I think Minnesota has the upper hand. Obviously, they have home court because they're the higher seed. But defense, and this is going to sound cliche, but defense wins championships.
Thanks, Sad.
Yeah. So the offenses are going to be great. I can't wait to see Ant-Man and Karl Anthony Towns versus Luka and Kyrie.
Hold on a minute here, Nick. You're
What?
forgetting somebody.
I knew you were going to do that. Well, let's go back to that for a second because I forgot. So Minnesota and Denver, incredible series, not for the right reasons, though. The closest game in that series was 26 points.
It was always swinging in one direction or the other, and then it all gets topped off by Minnesota pulling off the biggest Game 7 comeback in the history of the NBA.
20 points, by the way. They were trailing, I think, going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I had basically written them off. I said it was over. I pulled the Bill Plaschke saying it's over.
That's one of your favorite lines. But yeah, I think we all have egg on our face because we thought Denver was going to run away with this series, and we weren't even going to talk about Minnesota, even though they were the number one defense in the NBA this past season. So I look at this series, but we get off to an awkward start because of the first 4 games of the series. They each win 2 games on the opposing team's floor. So that screwed the whole series up. Then we skip ahead a few. We go to game 6. And Minnesota absolutely beats the living shit out of Denver by almost 50 points. Which I don't know what happened to Denver from game 6 on. It's almost like they didn't want to play. Like, at all.
It's like honestly, it was like they thought they had it in the bag.
I mean, I don't know. That was like the tweet we saw the other day from John Boy, who purposely tried to say the outcome of game 1 of Pacers Celtics before even letting it finish. I was like, oh my God.
Him pulling a Dewey Beach Truman.
Yes. And I was like, can we like slow the roll and let the game finish? And so that series happens. That was an incredible series, but not defensively, more offensively, and who was going to swing that series. Then obviously you had Knicks, Pacers, a lot of issues in that series, injuries, officiating issues and this is across the whole NBA playoffs. The officiating has been terrible. Flagrants were called left and right.
I don't understand what a flagrant foul is anymore.
Well,
and then you've got issues where you have some referees letting things play out, and then you have Scotty Foster, Mr. Whistle, as I call him.
Well, no, I call him the series extender.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's because Tim Donaghy in his documentary on Netflix talks about Scott Foster all the time, say, oh, well, the NBA saves their ace in the hole to extend a series for more TV time.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Tim Donaghy said that about him.
So that's why he gets that nickname of the series extender.
Meanwhile, can you do me a favor, Nick? Can you also ask Tim what his parlay is for the Boston Indiana game for game 2?
You know, and this is a little behind the curtain. I actually emailed with Donaghy, and we were supposed to have him on. We were supposed to have him on the show. Like he had essentially agreed to be on our show.
What?
And then, like, he was in the middle of the press tour of the movie. Oh, that's the best time because he's got something to talk about. And I just saw recently he did an interview with I don't know, it's like a deep voice channel, they call it, where it's not like you don't see the actual person interviewing, you just hear the voice and then he's talking to a person. It was very odd. But
I mean, reach out again and see if he'd come on.
I tried. I never got an answer, but I have to see if I can find the email again. But I don't want to make this about him. But my point is that series, the Knicks Pacers, it should have been over after Game 5. Yeah. I think.
And because look,
they should have won 2 games in that span.
Yeah. And I mean, look, it was frustrating. I was pissed, but at the same time, we were hurt greatly. Like, we had injuries up the wazoo.
And speaking of injuries up the wazoo, Jalen Brunson. I mean, quite literally. Well, actually, it was his foot, but part of his leg. So he has the injury. I have some questions about it because we were watching that game on Playback.
Wait, are you talking about his foot or his hand?
No, he had. Oh no, you're right. He had a foot injury throughout the whole year he was dealing with, but the hand injury, which all of a sudden we're doing the game and he's not in the game anymore, and then we get a breaking release that Jalen Brunson.
Jalen is hurting.
Yes. Thank you. Nice save. Jalen Brunson's hurt. He's got a sprained hand, which makes no sense, by the way. Either you might have sprained fingers, you might have a broken thumb.
They talked about a fracture, but they said there was a fracture with the wrist. But if you remember, we were talking about it was a broken hand, but Stephen A. Smith, who's at MSG, said it was a broken thumb. So is it just one finger or is it the whole hand?
It doesn't matter. So if he has a broken finger, like his series was over, especially with the thumb, which is a gripping finger. Like that was the end of the series for him.
Fair enough. But my point is, look, we can whine and moan all we want. Series is over. I don't think it ruins the next season. I mean, you made it to the second round. You made it to Game 7.
Knicks fans got to relax. And I'm talking about the ones that over-exaggerate everything.
Mm-hmm.
Good year. Really good year.
I think they could have faced Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals, but you were banged up. With Josh Hart banged up, Jalen Brunson banged up, Robinson, and then of course losing Julius Randle all those months ago, you weren't going anywhere.
It would have been a tough series, even healthy, in my opinion, just because Boston has weapons up the wazoo. They were such a dominant team. They won the Eastern Conference, like, what was it, like a month or two in advance before the season was over? I mean,
now, unlike others here at the network, I think I would have loved to have seen them face Boston and not with it didn't matter.
See, I understand the point that the Knicks fans make. Oh, give us a chance. You never know, even though it would have been a very big, long shot. I would have been for the Knicks making it to the conference finals. What do we have to lose? I mean, you're going to get a few games at MSG, which I'm sure the fans would have totally filled to the brim, by the way.
Which is why those guys on the injury report, Josh Hart and company, that's why they played that game, because what did they have to lose at that point?
Right. I mean, I'm sure they all knew in their head that Boston was going to be incredibly hard to beat. Just, I don't know if they would have won a game in that series, except for Kristaps Porzingis being, even before the series, not playing Game 1 and Game 2.
Correct.
And the Pacers almost won Game 1 if it wasn't for a ridiculous shot by Jaylen Brown to force overtime. But
let's go back over to the West to talk about the OKC Dallas series, because there is
huge disappointment.
Yeah. Huge. Listen, OKC is a young team. If you remember my predictions, Nick, I said I had Denver over OKC in a Western Conference final prediction because I said the championship level of experience of Denver would prevail over that.
That wasn't a bad pick.
Because Oklahoma City is such a young team. So they're not going to have the experience. And at the same time, you talk about Luka and you talk about Kyrie. Dallas did have the experience over OKC. My problem with it was that they had opportunities to win games over Dallas, especially that elimination game, and they blew it. Look, I get the call towards the end of the game. I think it was involving Washington was controversial, because it looked like to me in that 3-point shot that Washington was throwing, it looked like to me it hit ball. But at the same time, with a shot like that, with seconds going, why are you risking a foul at that time? Like, why are you doing that and giving him 3 free throws when you take the chance on him, making a tough shot, and then, if he makes it, I mean, unbelievable shot. If he doesn't, then you go aggressively for the rebound and try to put the game away.
I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. I mean, not to keep using the Pacers-Celtics situation with Jaylen Brown, where you saw Pascal Siakam kind of straighten up rather than try to play defense, because you don't want to force a 4-point play, which would have lost them the game right then and there. But in my opinion, foul him. Don't let him take the shot. Force him to tie the game at the free throw line. And the worst case scenario is you still have a timeout and you could have won that game in a much simpler scenario. Same thing with Dallas and OKC. Same scenario. Don't either wrap him up or don't foul. Because you're putting yourself in a situation where, and I hate using this phrase, but you're half pregnant. You can't decide which way you want to go. Either take the foul and literally wrap him up so he can't shoot, or just let him shoot and hope he misses. I mean, it's tough. And the reason OKC is going to get bashed on is because they were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. And that's a tough feat. You were an amazing team all year. Shai Alexander, 48 straight games of 30 points or more. Should have been the MVP. I understand Jokic had an incredible year, and he's won 3 out of the last 4 MVPs. Shai was a better player than Jokic this year. That's just and people are going to yell at me for that.
That's your opinion, and that's Shaq's opinion.
Yeah, and people are going to get mad at me because people are going to say, you have it out for Jokic. I actually like Jokic. Jokic is a really good player. That's not why I'm saying it. I think Shai had a better year offensively scoring. So I feel like the voting, and this is a whole different issue for another day, but I feel like MVP voting is very skewed, in my opinion. And some people were saying, if he had gotten it 3 in a row, it would have been voter fatigue in the 4th straight year, which is also a stupid excuse not to vote for somebody.
Right. Yeah. And then, of course, we have the Boston-Cleveland series. And look, Cleveland had a nice run, but no contest.
There was just no way. I mean, Jared Allen, who I happen to have liked because he was in a Brooklyn Nets uniform, very good rebounder, could protect the cup, just didn't play. And that really affected them because they had no rim protector throughout the whole series. Then you hear all the rumors and speculation of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell not getting along. Now, Donovan Mitchell got hurt towards the end. I think he missed the last 2 games of the series, if I'm not mistaken.
There were a whole bunch of people out in the Cavs last game, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but I'm saying Donovan Mitchell was a huge loss in those final 2 games because they just were not... Well, they competed in game 5, I think. But after that, they just had no offensive prowess whatsoever. Caris LeVert looked like he didn't want to be there in the final game of the series. And I happen to like Caris LeVert, but Evan Mobley, who they drafted, I think, 2nd overall a couple of years ago, was non-existent. Just not good. Cleveland has a lot of questions to answer. But here's the other issue. So I started to talk about the rumors of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. They don't get along with each other, which it was kind of a shock to me, considering that they're the core players of this team. And then it comes out that Darius Garland is represented by Clutch. So that's LeBron's people. And basically, what they're saying is, oh, if Donovan comes back, Darius is going to demand a trade out of Cleveland. Can we stop with the pettiness of demanding trades?
And I guess he's going to demand a trade to wherever LeBron goes in free agency.
I have no idea, but this is petty. Oh, you don't like playing with the? How do you not want to play with one of the biggest stars in the NBA? Oh, I have to be on my own. I have to prove myself I'm a star. Darius, you're not a star. You're not. Play with Donovan. You have a better chance.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. I'm just going to very quickly give conference final prediction. I see I see Minnesota and Dallas being an absolutely fun series. I can see that one going 7, and Patana will be very happy to hear that I'm going to pick Minnesota in 7. Boston and Indiana, I think Indiana is going to make it tough on Boston, but the way that Boston went on a 12-0 run, Indiana comes back, and then they still manage to lose that game, even with no Kristaps Porzingis there. Boston's winning that in 6. It's going to be a Boston.
That scared me though that they were up 12-0 and almost blew it. I mean, goes to okay.
But we saw then. I think was that in the Cleveland series too, where they lost the game that they
lost game 2
off the gas.
They always lose game 2 for whatever reason. They put up a really good performance in game 1 of every series. Then they say, all right, foot off the gas pedal. We won game 1. No worry. And then they just completely throw game 2 away in every series that they do. So, I don't know. The way I look at the Pacers-Celtics series, the Pacers are going to win at least one game. I just have that feeling. It would have been interesting if they had stolen game 1. I think that would have been a whole series changer right off the bat if the Pacers stole a game at the Boston Garden. But I think this goes 6, and Boston will prevail because they're just a better team offensively and defensively than the Pacers. Dallas and Minnesota, this is going to be a slugfest. And not really from a defensive standpoint, because a lot of these guys don't play defense, including Luka. I think it goes 7. I think you're going to see an incredible game 7. I think you're just going to see all the stops get pulled out. I think you might see a double overtime finish in game 7. And I think Minnesota will somehow pull this out, even though they haven't been to this type of level of game in 20 to 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're going to see a Minnesota, Boston NBA Finals.
I agree. All right. Speaking of NBA, speaking of finals, finally, it sounds like it's going to be official this week that NBA will finalize its last package deal with NBC and move there after 2020. After the 24-25 season, bringing an end to the TNT broadcast. But wait a minute. TNT also broke some news that apparently they are taking what is called a sub-licensing deal with ESPN and will air college football games.
I don't know how to feel about this.
I think I know how you feel about this.
What? Well, that or... I mean, because I read the press release and I said, wait a minute. These are direct competitors. And now TNT says, surrender, surrender, surrender. We can't beat you, so we'll work with you and sub-license.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think it is from my limited NBA media because you're Mr. NBA. I think this is desperation. TNT, you saw the reports all week. TNT, they were going to make an 11th hour move. They were going to do this. They were going to do that.
That was a load of horse shit, by the way.
But look, at this point, I think TNT, I mean, you know what's funny, Nick? I saw a tweet earlier on the day we're recording this, and it was a newspaper clipping from when NBC and NBA parted ways last time, as they were leaving for, I think, Turner. And NBC said, essentially, we don't need the NBA. The NBA deal doesn't make sense for us now because now we have NASCAR. 20 years, and I think we're looking in a mirror here.
Yeah, I mean, David Zaslav is probably the dumbest CEO chairman of a company I've ever seen, and I have no problem standing on that mountain, because I think there's a lot of people who agree with me. And first of all, you show up at Madison Square Garden with a Knicks hat, and you're sitting in the front row, knowing that you're basically destroying some of the best NBA coverage and the best studio show in the history of the NBA. And this is your replacement? It's not even live content. Well, it is, but it's sub-licensing whatever's on ESPN's airwaves and putting it on TNT.
And I'm going to say it again, desperation. They realize, oh, we're probably not going to be able to have an affordable and great quality sports broadcast if our lead in sports is NASCAR, unless you want to count AEW in the sports department.
NBA is a cash cow. I don't care what people say. I understand rights have gotten expensive, and I was reading a stat that the NBA is now going to be taking in over $7 billion in NBA rights fees over the next 5, 6, 7 years. That's an incredible number.
Yeah, that's basically been the talk that I've seen in media too. It's rights fees.
Because
rights fees for broadcasting and hosting fees for in certain cases of hosting events.
For all the digital stuff too. I mean, like, because now I forgot who I was talking to, but NFL, you need like 7 different like streaming platforms or something now just to. I was talking to Zan about it.
Watch every single regular season game.
And it's going to cost you like $850 or something between all the different, which is insane, by the way. Most people can't afford that on the average. But I wouldn't even say this is desperate. I would say like this is sad, like empathetic. And like TNT, you could have kept the NBA. There is some murkiness with the whole NBA. Turner had a match option, which is now there's more speculation coming out that they never had it. And it was basically, it fell apart. And I mean, this is silly. Inside the NBA was huge. They could, and I started to talk about this last week, that you could have licensed Inside the NBA to another network if they owned it. But I don't know. Long story short, you can't replace Inside the NBA and the NBA on TNT coverage.
No. Well, what's funny is as part of the NBA NBC deal, they're going to do basketball night in America following the end of the NFL season.
They're ripping themselves off. That's what they're doing. Football night in America. Oh, wait. We'll call it basketball night in America. Terrible. TRBL.
Terrible. And I'm wondering if any of the guys from inside the NBA are going to make their way over to NBC.
I'll give you one quick sentence just because you were asking about it. So basically, there's rumor and speculation. We talked about this, that Ernie Johnson wants to stay with Turner. Now, there was other rumors that came out saying that's a negotiating ploy. So I don't know what's true, but Ernie is one of those honest guys where I don't see him doing that.
Well, I think Nick, Ernie has earned enough reputation of whatever he wants to do. If he wants
that's exactly it.
Yeah. If he wants to stay at Turner and do March Madness and the MLB, fine. If he wants to go to NBC to be their lead in the studio for basketball night in America, whatever they do for their NBA broadcasts, he's earned that too.
I hate to say this though, but everybody is replaceable, and I hate saying that because you can't do something forever. But
it's not going to feel the same if Shaq and
absolutely agreed.
If Shaq and Barkley all go over to NBC, but Ernie Johnson just
no, doesn't. You're absolutely right, and I wouldn't change a thing. And the last rumor I heard was that they might just say, "Hey, whoever gets it, Amazon, NBC, we'll buy out the studios and we'll let you do it from Atlanta." That's the other rumor I heard, which I think that's brilliant if that's the case. And for Amazon, it probably doesn't cost that much, to be honest. NBC, it might hurt a little bit more, but Amazon has free flow money. They can do whatever they want. But there's rumors that the show might stay together, just not inside the NBA.
Praying. All right, let's talk some baseball. Let's go, and we're going to talk some local baseball, Mets and Yankees. This comes from the same article. Let's from Joel Sherman of the New York Post. We'll start on the Mets side. There's a report that obviously Pete Alonso is going to be a free agent at the end of this season. We talked about the potential big money that he could get. We talked about, the Mets supposedly letting him, they're going to let him walk into free agency and criticizing him. Well, it turns out a report from Joel Sherman says that the Mets did offer him a 7-year, $158 million extension during June of 2023. And apparently Alonso turned it down. Well, should I say Alonso turned it down, or should I say BS?
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that one, actually, to be honest. But my guess is that Pete Alonso has been very active in his negotiations. So he thinks he's here. And the Mets, who think he's an amazing player, are right below it. They're right below it. And
he is an amazing player. Let's not get that mixed up.
Right. But he's in the atmosphere, and the Mets are in the sky.
Well, consider who his agent is. Who thinks everybody is in the atmosphere. He thought that Cody Bellinger was in the atmosphere. He thought that Matt Chapman was in the atmosphere.
Oh, that's a Scott Boras staple for many years. That's why he always wanted the Yankees in every negotiation to raise the price.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
But I look at this deal, and I'm trying to do quick math at the moment to figure out the answer. But, okay, so it's $22.5 million a year, this deal. There was no way in hell Pete Alonso was taking $22.5 million a year.
Not when you've got guys across town making $30-35 million a year.
But the problem is, he thinks he's worth $35 million a year at a position that doesn't pay that money at all. First base doesn't pay that money. We know that for a fact.
But he's still going to get some sort of big money contract, and maybe he breaks it. Maybe he becomes the one who gets that money.
Well, I think when we discussed these rumors originally, I told you, there's going to be one stupid team that's going to be overly desperate that's going to say, "Hey, Pete, we'll give you $200 million over 5 years just for AAV's sake." Because that would be what, $40 million a year?
That would be 40.
So, and what do you think Pete's going to say? Sayonara. Don't need you anymore.
Well, I'm questioning how much of spending the Mets are going to do after a couple of seasons. Last 2023 was in the toilet, and then what was the comment about punting 2024 away?
Well, that was when they had the investigation going down with the GM and the...
Yeah, well, they were trading. They used that to basically trade Verlander and Scherzer.
Yeah, well, they had to pay $95 million plus just so they could get a prospect back in returns, which was a silly thing, by the way. Yeah. But they are so far, they're more than Yankee-sized over the cap. The Mets are so far over the cap, and it's not even a lot of their players anymore. So, I don't know. Steve Cohen's got a lot of issues, on top of the fact that he promised. Now, how many years is he into the Mets ownership now?
It's a few.
So he came out and said, "I have the famous 5-year plan to win a title." Not happening.
No,
not happening.
Let's talk about the other side now. So Hal Steinbrenner, Juan Soto. Obviously, there's talks about will they negotiate with Juan Soto during the season to try and avoid what happened a couple of years ago with Aaron Judge. And Hal said he was open. Soto said contact Scott. They can get something going. And
Surprisingly.
Yeah. Well, then came a report. I'll quickly mention it. The day that we're recording this, where Hal is basically saying that the Yankees are going to have to lower some payroll.
The reason I laugh at that is, how many times, Tom, have we heard the Steinbrenner family say we need to lower the payroll? And how many times have they lowered the payroll?
No.
0.
I mean, I get it. Look, Hal has this reputation of not being like George, and
But he's not George.
I know he's not, and I know it's with all the talk of last season about it's about selling the concessions and breading the butts in the seats, and
Yes.
not about the actual success.
Chicken tender buckets. Yes.
Yes, but you know what? I'm seeing all these Yankee fans freak out now. Is it bad optics when the highest payroll team in baseball is saying something like this? Damn right, it's bad optics.
Well, let's clarify one thing. They technically are not the highest payroll out there. The Dodgers are technically the highest payroll because of the massive amount of money they spent in the offseason.
Yeah.
But they're in the top 3.
Yeah, but they're in the top 3, and they're the legend. Yes, they have the Dodgers, but this is the Yankees. But, okay, my point. It's time for another C-O-N. Yankee fans, and actually just any MLB fans, shit posters. You know what this is. This is a negotiating ploy. This is a negotiating ploy. I am telling you this. Boris only opened early talks with the Yankees just to try and get a number out of them, like a starting number, so that way he can increase it. And there have been insiders who have said, the Yankees have been warned about doing business with Scott Boras. So I completely understand. I get why people are mad, but you have to understand what's going on here because they're dealing with Scott Boras. And I think Scott Boras should also be the one to watch out after, as I just said, he put everybody, all of his star players, in the sky, and they basically got diddly compared to what he think he was going to get. And then Matt Chapman also fired him.
Yeah, I mean, I would put this down as a 0.0 for Scott Boras in the offseason. So the way this season is gone, off-season is gone, I should say, it was a complete fail, and that's Scott Boras saying, "Don't talk about me like that." Just turn that off. Yeah, Scott, you can wait. Basically, my point is that Scott Boras needs to make this up to his clients somehow, because that was a terrible offseason.
Mm-hmm. So you get why I talk about this negotiating ploy, because what if Soto, who's seems to be having a lot of fun with the Yankee locker room, how the Yankees have been doing minus the losing streak they're on right now, has been doing in this season. What if he wants to take a little hometown discount? Because then the pressure is not going to be on the Yankees. The pressure is going to be then on Scott Boras to do business right. Now, there is a concern because if, let's say, Alonso does go away and Mr. Moneybags over in Queens wants to spend, will he throw a whole desperation number of $450 million just to get Juan Soto, just to stick it to the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, Juan Soto had originally turned down, I think it was a 13-year, $425 million contract from the Nationals.
And he's probably still going to get something like that, if maybe a little less. But, I mean, it's going to be up to Juan Soto to see, does he just want to get whoever the biggest offer is? Or is there going to be a little bit of, can the Yankees win him over a little bit with what they do this season?
Yeah. Now, Juan Soto's having an incredible season so far. I know it's early.
And I think he's going to get a bag, because keep in mind something. He's 25 years old.
Oh, he's prime.
I was going to say, this is not Aaron Judge we're talking about, that the contract would end in his age 40 season. Juan Soto's contract would go to age 36, 37.
Right. Now, you don't want you got to be careful you don't run into a Bryce Harper situation with a contract. Also Scott Boras, by the way. Now you have the assholes like Bryce Harper who come out and say, "Oh, I want a new deal when I have 7 years left on my contract," which was the silliest thing I ever heard. But long story short, on Soto and Steinbrenner, I don't see a deal getting done during this season.
No.
I think this is all a ploy.
Juan Soto's going to test free agency.
Of course he is. Of course. And now you're gonna tell me or not tell me that he looked at the Shohei deal and he's gonna say, "I want serious money."
Right. This outlier is going to screw up baseball contracts forever at this point.
I mean, when the highest deal before that was what? 350, 375?
Maybe 400. Yeah.
What was Harper's deal? Because I think that was the biggest deal, I think. But I'm looking it up because I don't remember. But it was
$330 million.
Was there anything bigger than that? Was Machado's or Tatis's bigger?
Judge was 350.
Oh, Judge was 350. Okay. Actually, if you can look up Tatis and Machado, that would help too.
Machado was also 350. Tatis was 340.
Okay, so it's all in the range. So these are big deals. And we're talking about more than double for Shohei. So Soto's probably saying, "Oh, wait, I'm a young guy. I'm 25. I can sign a 12-year deal and still be under 40 years old."
Yeah.
My guess is he's going to get somewhere close to $500 million. That's where I see it. I don't know if the Yankees will pay it, but I think they'd be silly not to get into the negotiating window at least. So we'll see.
All right. Quickly, we're running out of time here, so we got to get through these quick. Multiple NBA execs per the LA Times have discussed potential of taking Bronny James. We talked about certain teams, if they would or not. According to Dan Woog, it's multiple NBA executives as a means of trying to land LeBron potentially in free agency. Now, we have seen comments from the pair, who Bronny saying, "Oh, I don't know if I necessarily want to go where my dad goes because I want to build my own name." And LeBron saying, "I'm focused on the end of my career, not exactly my son. So, wherever he goes is wherever he goes."
Yeah, I mean, I'll play one quick sound because it's important. Yeah. So Kendrick Perkins was on NBA Today with Ramona Shelburne and Shaniqua Akumake, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but they were on NBA Today, and he scorched earth. That's the way I'm going to put it. So if you just want to credit this as NBA Today, ESPN, that's fine.
Okay. Just play.
But here we go.
Hey, look, let me say this. We have to stop. As the media and everybody else shining the light on Bronny, because it's other players that are deserve our attention, right? The lottery guys, the guys that are actually going to get drafted in the first round. Like, we're talking about a guy, a young man that's possibly going to go late second round or not getting drafted at all. I've never, in my 4 years of working here, I've never sat on the table where we're talking about a second-round pick.
But this is LeBron James' son, and that is a legitimate storyline that one of the greatest of all times has a son trying to play in the NBA at the same time.
And you have to give Bronny credit for actually trying to say the right things and showing up in the right places. And at the end of the day...
And by the way, I like seeing LeBron in the stands as a proud dad. I like that. That's a great example from fatherhood.
He's the number one scorer in NBA.
What does that have to do with his son being at the draft combine?
Scottie Pippen's kid was playing on the Lakers.
We didn't shine the light on Scottie Pippen's son like this. We can't move the goalposts and feel like we go do it when it's convenient.
I mean, that wasn't even the whole thing. Like, this was a 4-minute rant by Kendrick Perkins. And by the way, you ready for the news flash? He's 100% right.
He is. I mean, look, did Bronny have a good combine? Yes. He still only averaged 4 points a game in college.
4, 4.5, 5, who cares? But my point is, Kendrick Perkins is 100% right. This guy should not be drafted in the first round, or the second round, or the third round, or no rounds.
I mean, there was this talk, could they just put Bronny James in the G League and then have the G League team benefit?
No. This guy is not NBA ready at all. He went for one season, and because he's got the LeBron James name, that's why he's being forced to come out of college after one season. So I agree wholeheartedly with Kendrick Perkins, which is a rarity because Kendrick Perkins is a big loudmouth that sometimes can't control his own mouth. So I agree with what he's saying, and everyone else has got to take a chill pill because his son is not NBA ready. That's how I would put it.
Okay, quickly over to the football side. Marvin Harrison Jr., Fanatics. The situation just seems to be getting worse. So now Marvin Harrison Jr. had... All right, quickly, want to get over to the Marvin Harrison Jr. Fanatics situation. Now, if I remember correctly, Marvin Harrison Jr., you have the story in front of you. There's something that they sign in college. It's not an NIL, but there is something that players
the licensing deal with the NFL.
Is it a licensing deal with the NFL?
With the NFLPA. It's a licensing deal which allows the players to be involved in all the jersey sales and having their names involved in everything.
So it is. All right. So over a 4-year period, and it's supposed to stretch even if they go on to the NFL and they don't play their full years in college. Marvin Harrison Jr. never signed that. And then he used that as a means of not signing the NFLPA licensing agreement, which I think we've already talked about earlier in the year. Earlier in this month, probably. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is in a situation where there's not going to be potentially any jerseys available of his come NFL time. He may not even be in the Madden video game.
Right, because signed through the NFLPA and the NFL to have his name licensed through NFL memorabilia content. So the biggest issue, there was a suit filed in New York Supreme Court, May 2023, that Harrison signed a fully binding and enforceable contract while the company calls a binding term sheet. Term sheets are essentially documents where two parties agree to agree, but they are not the formal deal. However, courts can enforce them in certain instances. The New York Court of Appeals has ruled that in the past that contract terms don't have to be fixed with absolute certainty to be forcible. So it's a bunch of he said, she said on if a deal was signed. Now, call me crazy. If your name is signed on a document, that would make me think it's a signed document, wouldn't it? I mean...
Mm-hmm. But the fact that he has signed, supposedly has no player things going on. I mean, the last time I can think of something like this, Nick, I think about Barry Bonds with MLB, how he didn't sign anything with licensing with the MLB Players Association.
Right. So here's the terminology. So obviously he went viral because he was on Pat McAfee's show and was talking about the whole situation. So Pat McAfee said on the show that Harrison doesn't have a deal with Fanatics, and that is why Harrison has yet to sign the NFL Players Association's group licensing agreement. That's what they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
Fanatics claims the suit that Harrison revealed confidential information to ESPN and reposting the videos, which it calls misleading. So now we're having a whole battle of what's the word for reputation? We talk about this all the time in lawsuits. Over the years, when your reputation is effed up by somebody.
The only term I can think of right now is character association.
Yes. So basically, they're claiming
defamation.
Thank you. That's it. So they're basically claiming defamation for misleading information. Fanatics on Marvin Harrison Jr. Now. It says, while financial details of the contract have been redacted, ESPN reported it was worth at least $1 million for autographs, signed trading cards, apparel warning games, and other marketing efforts. The homepage for Harrison's apparel company, the official Harrison collection, states that it is the only website to purchase signed Harrison memorabilia. So there's a lot of issues here. The suit also claims Harrison tried to get Fanatics to match offers of competitors, but he wouldn't show the company the offers. So I don't know if Marvin Harrison is a snake as a business person or if he's sketchy or what. But I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I honestly don't know too much about licensing deals to even comment on this, but I guess Marvin Harrison Jr. sees himself as somebody who, doesn't need the minimum that they want to try. He wants to try and get as much as possible, make the most of his name.
I mean, that goes back to the NIL situations through college, and with NIL deals being an issue now, well, not an issue, but it gives college athletes even more leverage that they already have deals going into the NFL. So they could say, well, screw you. I'm not taking your money. I already have a deal coming out of college. So NILs have kind of changed the game when it comes to endorsements.
For sure. All right. Very quickly, want to end the show on this. The NFL has announced plans very recently in the last 24 hours to test out an electronic system for measuring first downs during preseason games. And if it goes well, will be extended into the 2024 season. Now,
hello, tennis challenge system.
Yeah, everyone's saying this would probably bring an end to the chain game. Yes, but if the technology fails, they will have the chain game available as backups at the NFL stadiums.
So basically the famous term of the computer is buffering will go to the chain gang if needed. But this is the tennis challenge system. Wherever the ball lands, you don't need the umpires who go like this half the time. If you're watching on the video side, they do the in signal or the out signal or whatever.
or the this way.
Yeah, that way. On the serves. Yeah. And but here's the issue, and I brought this up to you, and maybe you have an answer. Because I certainly don't. What happens for the plays where they don't blow the whistle on a play, like they allow, like if the legs are still running, like on a running back, where is the replay going to, or the camera operating system going to pick them up for a spot?
Well, it's going to be whenever the whistle was blown.
I'm just saying it's going to be hard, like if you have moving legs.
I know, which is why they're going to have humans there too, to experienced human referees too, to be there. But you know what, Nick? After all the BS we've talked about in this year of bad officiating, whether it be in baseball, basketball, it's good to finally see somebody trying something new, even if it's something as limited as this with refereeing and officiating.
Now, because we're running out of time, what I'll say is this system is better than what they tried to do with pass interference with a challenge system, because pass interference was up for full interpretation. So there was really no way to have a challenge system, even though they tried and it failed miserably.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this is different because first down is very cut and dry based on spots, which is what this challenge system. I don't even know if it's a challenge system or if it's just a marker system.
It's just a marker system, I think.
So they can just go back and say, "Hey." But wait a minute, though. You can challenge a first down marker, though.
Technically, you can. You're right. Technically, you can. But that's the challenge thing. This is for determining the down itself.
So
when it's too close to call.
Right. But I'm saying it's going to be weird in the challenge system's sake now that they have first down markers. And do the teams have access? Is it just an NFL thing? And are you going to need someone up above controlling that system for the regards of the first down? Like, all right, let's go to the first down marker system to see if they got the first down. And is it the same thing for challenges? Like when they go away in the final 2 minutes of before the half and the fourth, is that automatic? Like, can they check the markers?
Well, I mean, they're testing everything, basically. They're testing first down markers. They're testing goal line, extra technology there. So I say let's see it play out. It's one thing to talk about it, but let's see it play out during those games in August.
It is interesting, though, because quickly we were both looking this up. It's Hawkeye, which is the same system that's used in tennis to get the ball marker, which is going to be the same thing. But they're not using it as a ball marker in the NFL. They're using it more as a spot marker to see where the feet cross the plane. So that's the significant difference.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media on Facebook, X, and Instagram at ETB Sports. Same thing for the network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Make sure to listen to the Empty the Bench shows, including this one, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, so much more. If you are listening on those feeds, make sure to go to the YouTube home, youtube.com/ETB Network, where we just passed, I think it's the 745 subscriber mark.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, we're getting closer and closer to 1,000. Please help us. Working with Playback obviously was step one. Now we're getting closer to that mark of 1,000. So please help us. It's very important.
Yeah, shout out to Playback, the official sponsor of this show, as well as the rest of the network. And go to etbpodcast.com for more information about the network, as well as a whole bunch of blogging content from several of our contributors.
Yeah,
right.
So that'll do it for this episode 234. A lot we got into this week, a lot more coming next week as we get closer into the dead period of sports.
We got baseball.
We got baseball, but yeah, we're getting closer to the NBA season being over, the NHL season being over.
Hey, we do have the Summer Olympics this year.
That's true. You're right. So we'll have to get into that as well. But that'll do it for episode 234. He's Tom Albano. I'm Nick Morgasen. We will see you next week for 235. Good night, everybody.
Take care, all.